We've been passionate about living off the land through our food for a long time, and we do that by gardening and foraging and hunting and fishing. But it's just been in the past couple of years that I've gotten really interested in another aspect of life that we can source from the materials right around us, and that's shelter. Jordan and I both grew up making lots of forts in the woods, maybe you did too, and I really think there's some instinct in most of us to build shelters from the materials around us that feel good and feel like they belong to a specific place. As we plan for building our house on the farm next year, we wanted to try out some of these ideas we've been drawn to, one of which is clay plaster, since we have such an abundance of clay out here in the mountains. We're currently renovating an old apartment in the barn so that we can live here while we build our house, so it seemed like the perfect opportunity to test out some clay plaster. Now it's getting a little late in the season to do plaster, but we were lucky enough to have some warm days so our materials weren't completely frozen and we could get some work in. To make our clay plaster, we first had to find some good clay-rich subsoil. Luckily, here in Western Pennsylvania, it's basically impossible to dig into the ground and not hit clay. We had already identified a great place to dig because it will be the future site of hopefully a spring-fed pond. So while the clay was quite heavy to dig since it was so wet, it felt like a win-win, and the clay was incredibly pure. Normally for plastering, you'd want to screen your soil through like a mesh screen so that you're getting out any stones or sticks, anything bigger than about 1/4 inch. But after screening our first batch, we found that this seam of clay was so pure that it had virtually no sticks or stones in it, so we actually skipped that step for the subsequent batches of plaster. I don't think you know what could happen. Come here, get off of that. Get off, come here. Ew, come here. You're playing with fire. Playing with ice.
The stuff that's not frozen. Otherwise we're gonna have to lost it. It's frozen on the inside.
Oh no.
Wow, that is a frozen block. Let's get this right out. Defrosts. You can see that is like pure. That's got my fingerprints on it.
Yeah.
That is pure clay.
Clay as a substance provides great sticking strength, but it does have a tendency to shrink and crack as it dries. You've probably noticed this if you go out to a particularly clay-heavy area during a drought and see all those little fissures in the ground. To remedy this in our plaster, we add sand and fiber to the mix. The sand helps keep the plaster from cracking as it dries, and the fiber adds tensile strength. This means as all those fibers knit together and kind of lock in place, they keep the plaster together and sticking to the wall despite the force of gravity and other forces trying to pull it down and apart. For our fiber, we use some chopped straw as well as a lot of long dried grass from mowing the land earlier in the summer. There are a lot of options for fiber, but a good rule of thumb for testing that out is to grab a bundle in your hand, and if you can't easily break it, then it's probably strong enough to use for plaster.
Tensile strength.
Yeah.
If you make that face, it's good.
Yeah, if you make that face and you still can't break it,
Okay.
It's good.
Can't face that face.
I used a lawnmower to chop up the straw and grass into small pieces, aiming for about 2 inches, but a mix is okay.
Go to ball. Ready? You're just kind of like fluffing it up.
Yeah, and just so it's not so dense so that the, lawnmower doesn't get stuck. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. Mattress quality.
Oh, is that right?
See if anybody catches that one.
Ew, I didn't make that as a bed for you. I know it's nice and soft. Yeah, you did say mattress quality. So yeah, that's looking pretty fine for the most part, which is good. The exact ratio of sand and clay soil and fiber that you use in your plaster is going to vary depending on how much clay is in your soil and what type of clay it is. So what I recommend is always making test batches before you start plastering a whole wall. We made up a couple batches with different ratios and just smeared them on a piece of old plywood to see how they held up. We ended up settling on a ratio of 3 parts fiber to 2 parts clay to 1 part sand. We found it easiest to mix our clay and sand together first and then start adding in our fiber once the clay and sand was well incorporated. One of my favorite aspects of earthen building is the human labor part of it, where the best way to get things done is to have lots of bodies working together. I think that's a really beautiful part of our history and a natural way to incorporate more of that reciprocal relationship type of lifestyle that Jordan and I want to be a part of. And this project was definitely a group effort. My friend Annie and I went to several natural building workshops earlier this summer. Shout out to designer Siggy Coco for her incredible teaching. And then Annie and I mixed up the first batch of plaster together. My friend Melanie helped me mix up the test batches to determine our ratio. And then I taught Jordan how to mix up a batch so that we could do it and finish up the wall. Ah! Lock it down. And then let's kind of spread it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, now we can add some sand. Just get a bucket just in case. Ooh. I mean, it's not warm, that's for sure, but it's exfoliating. Yeah.
Ice cold.
I know,
water.
that's the only thing I'm.
Water is literally snow that just melted.
Oh God, we're gonna have to.
Start a fire.
No, we're just gonna have to work really fast and then we'll warm ourselves up.
Oh.
Wait, that was a lot of water. Sorry, I should have stopped you.
All right. I don't know what I'm doing.
I know, that's why I should have stopped you. It's fine. We'll use it. That's cold. So it's always best to flip the dry over wet. So let's flip this side. Yeah. Nice. Made a little tamale of sorts.
Yeah. It's like dough.
Yeah.
Flip it the other way now.
Yeah. Wait, hold on, I've got a very wet section. Hold on. So much of this work is intuitive, which is not to say that it's unskilled, but it is something that you can learn to do pretty easily by just doing it with an experienced person and then pick it up quickly and teach it to others, which I think is really cool. And it helps that for making clay plaster, the labor aspect is really fun, even when the water is freezing like it was on the day Jordan and I mixed up this batch. The best way to do it is get everything onto a big tarp and then mix it together with a sort of stomping, twisting dance, stopping every once in a while to add more fiber, and then flip the materials over on the tarp so it all gets really homogenized. Yeah, so it's looking like that nice fudge, chocolate frosting.
Should I taste it?
Yeah, go for it. Moo will taste it for us. So we can start adding our fiber. Start.
Just gonna sprinkle it on.
So yeah, you can just start stomping.
Okay.
No. Whoops, the wind is, yeah, there we go. Yeah, wow, it's just like, gotta put it right down here. You gotta remind yourself to look up every once in a while or your neck will get really sore. That's what I found. Yeah. say, don't you feel very Hobbit-like when you do this?
I feel like a hobbit right now, and I am loving it.
POV, you're making clay plaster. All of the fiber you add should be well coated with the clay mixture, and it should hold together well but still be wet enough to spread with some force. Jumping into your big pile of plaster at the end is optional but recommended. That's looking good. We're just gonna roll it into a big turd, honestly. That's what it looks like. And leave it till tomorrow. Actually, right now it's kind of looking like a beached, like a seal. Like a manatee, yes. In this barn apartment we're renovating, there are existing thin wood walls. So we framed those out with 2x4s and then added some thin wooden strips over top called lath. When we nailed the lath to the 2x4s, we left about a 1/4 inch gap, and this is important because it's critical to how the plaster stays on the wall. As you're applying the plaster to the wall, part of it will squeeze through those little gaps, and then it'll slump down and harden, forming almost a hook that will hold the plaster to the wall. This is a feature called key.
Put it on the wall, that's a check in the house box. Okay. And then maybe we'll put the wheelbarrow back outside.
Highly textured surfaces like straw bale walls don't generally need lath because they already have lots of things for the plaster to hold on to, but flatter walls like wooden ones generally do, especially if you're putting on a nice thick layer of plaster. And we want ours to be at least a couple inches thick because when you add that much clay to your walls, you start getting really cool temperature and humidity regulating properties. The clay plaster will kind of soak up excess heat and humidity during times of warm, wet conditions and then release them back when the air in the room is drier and colder. Get on in here.
It's muddy. Try to just keep going off of the layer that you're on.
Yeah, I mean, you can work over there if you want, but just wet that edge down before you... Yeah, I meant like that one if you were going to do that one. Yeah. Yeah, we can just like meet up in the middle. We'll never be able to stop. We just gotta go until we're done. To make sure the plaster is making its way through those gaps in the lath, we applied it with a good bit of force. Wetting down both the lath and the edges of the previous plaster that's on the wall is helpful for ensuring a good bond. We mostly like to use our hands, but you can use a wooden float or trowel as well. Putting it on with our hands was extremely satisfying and results in a wall with a sort of a handmade texture that I really like. We didn't worry too much about small lumps and divots because we will be adding a second coat of plaster onto this once it dries, but we did try to make the wall generally even with no major undulations.
Sharp corners. Boo!
I did go over it at the end with the wooden float just to kind of even things out and to make sure I was exerting a lot of compressive force on the plaster to get it through those lath gaps. We did the first wall of what we're calling the cozy corner several weeks ago, and the second one just earlier this week, and so far both are holding up great. Next week, we hope to get a finished coat of plaster over them and call this part of the barn a wrap. It was a little intimidating to take this more theoretical knowledge I had gained from books and workshops and put it into practice, but the end result was great and it was an incredibly empowering experience. So if you've ever been tempted to make a wall out of clay, I definitely encourage you to give it a go.